Ethan Walker sat alone in the small Seattle cafe, staring out at the rain streaking the windows. The city felt grey and heavy, matching the emptiness he carried inside. A month had passed since his long-term relationship ended, yet the ache felt fresh, like a constant shadow he couldn't shake. He stirred his coffee absent-mindedly, the warmth doing little to fill the hollow space in his chest. The breakup had been quiet, civil even, but that didn't make the loneliness any easier. Friends kept telling him time would heal him, but time alone felt cold and heavy. He wanted distraction, something normal, yet everything reminded him of what he had lost. The familiar routine of work, coffee, and commuting felt meaningless without the one person who had shared all the small moments with him. Across the cafe, Claire Bennett leaned over her sketchbook, lost in her own world. She had come from Vancouver for a short work trip, yet the city's drizzle matched the mood she carried inside. Her breakup had been gentler than Ethan's, but the pain was no less real. The love she had invested, the late-night talks, the small shared laughter, it all felt like it had evaporated overnight. She tried to focus on her sketches, but her hand trembled slightly as her pencil moved over the paper. Drawing had always been her way to process feelings she couldn't speak aloud. Yet today even her sketches felt hollow. She glanced around the cafe, noticing couples chatting, friends laughing, and wondered if she would ever feel that closeness again. Fate seemed to intervene when her sketchbook slipped from the edge of the table. Ethan, sitting just a few feet away, saw it happen and instinctively reached for it. Their hands brushed as he handed it back to her. They paused, looking into each other's eyes. There was a moment of recognition, not of each other personally, but of a shared weariness, a quiet understanding of loss. Ethan gave a small, polite smile. "Here, this is yours." Claire's lips curved into a hesitant smile. "Thank you. I appreciate it." Neither wanted to speak too much, yet neither wanted the moment to end. Something about the brief contact, the shared glance, felt like an unspoken connection. Both were carrying invisible wounds, both trying to navigate through heartbreak. And suddenly they were not entirely alone. They returned to their seats, but their thoughts lingered on each other. The cafe's soft music and the rhythmic tapping of rain against the windows seemed to frame their silent awareness, a quiet beginning to something neither of them could yet name. Ethan found his mind drifting back to her sketchbook in the way she had held it, careful, almost protective, as if it contained not just her art, but pieces of herself. He realized he had been so absorbed in his own pain that he hadn't noticed anyone else in the world who might be feeling the same ache. Claire, meanwhile, felt a subtle warmth in her chest she hadn't expected. She didn't know his story, yet seeing someone else quietly carrying loss made her feel less isolated. It was strange, almost comforting, that someone else understood sorrow without needing words. As the rain continued outside, neither moved to leave. The moment stretched quietly, filled with possibilities. Ethan took a sip of his coffee, trying to ignore the flutter of nerves he hadn't felt in weeks. Claire doodled absent-mindedly, but her thoughts kept returning to the stranger who had shared a simple smile with her. There was no grand spark, no instant magic, yet a gentle curiosity had begun to take root. Both were cautious, wary of opening themselves to someone new too soon. Heartbreak had taught them lessons they weren't ready to forget, lessons about trust, vulnerability, and the ache of love lost. The cafe was crowded enough to offer privacy, yet small enough that their glances kept crossing. Ethan noticed the way Claire tilted her head as she drew, the slight furrow in her brow that hinted at concentration, and perhaps something deeper. Claire noticed the way Ethan's eyes softened when he looked at the world outside the window, as if he was searching for something, or someone to fill the void in his life. Neither spoke more than necessary, yet an invisible thread seemed to connect them, subtle and fragile, almost imperceptible. By the time they left the cafe, a quiet change had occurred. Their heartbreak was not healed, but the sense of isolation had softened slightly. They had recognized, without talking much, that someone else in the world understood the ache of love ending. The day outside was still grey and rainy, but for the first time in weeks, both felt a flicker of something unfamiliar yet welcome hope. They walked away separately, yet the memory of the brief encounter lingered, like a soft promise that life could offer unexpected warmth, even after the deepest pain. And though neither knew it yet, this chance meeting would mark the first step toward healing, toward connection, toward a possibility that both had thought they had lost forever. A quiet, fragile bond had begun, one that neither heartbreak nor caution could entirely deny. In the midst of loss, they had found a gentle, unexpected recognition of shared loneliness, and with it, the first stirrings of hope. The next day, Claire found herself wandering through a small art exhibit in downtown Seattle, hoping the change of scenery might quiet the restless thoughts lingering from her recent breakup. She had brought her sketchbook along, instinctively doodling abstract lines as her eyes wandered over the installations. The room was quiet, filled with soft murmurs and the gentle shuffle of feet, and for a moment, she felt almost peaceful. Ethan had decided to visit the same exhibit, drawn by curiosity and a need for distraction from his own thoughts. He walked slowly, absorbing the colors and textures, yet his mind kept replaying the brief encounter from the cafe. When he noticed Claire standing by one of the displays, sketchbook in hand, he froze for a second. She looked different in the daylight, more alive somehow. Yet there was the same quiet sadness in her eyes he had noticed yesterday. Hesitating for a moment, he walked over. "Hi," he said softly, not wanting to startle her. Claire looked up, startled, then recognized him instantly. "Oh, hey," she replied, a small smile tugging at her lips. There was no awkwardness, only a cautious warmth. Neither knew how to bridge the gap between strangers and something more. Yet neither wanted the moment to pass. They began to talk. At first about the exhibit itself, colors, shapes, and techniques, but soon the conversation shifted naturally toward their personal lives. Ethan admitted he had been struggling since his breakup, talking about loneliness and the sense of emptiness that had settled in his apartment. Claire shared her own experience, recounting quiet mornings that felt heavy, and nights spent staring at the ceiling, wondering if she would ever feel whole again. Their stories were different in details but mirrored each other in emotion, forming an unexpected connection. Walking through the gallery together, they discovered more than just art. They discovered empathy. Each revelation about past hurts and failed relationships was met not with judgment, but with understanding. Ethan found comfort in Claire's gentle laughter, the way she didn't rush her words, and the ease with which she admitted her vulnerability. Claire was surprised by Ethan's patience, the softness in his voice, and how he seemed to listen without trying to fix anything, simply allowing space for her feelings. After leaving the exhibit, Ethan suggested a walk by the waterfront. The rain had stopped, leaving the city sparkling with puddles reflecting neon lights. They strolled side by side, letting the gentle sound of water hitting the piers fill the quiet pauses in their conversation. They spoke of dreams, fears, and regrets, things they rarely shared with anyone else. Claire found herself smiling more freely than she had in months, feeling a small, fragile sense of hope. Ethan realized he was experiencing something he hadn't felt in a long time, being understood, without effort. Yet, even in these moments of closeness, there was a careful caution in their steps. Both had been hurt deeply before, and neither wanted to rush. They were aware of the fragility of emotions, the risk of opening up too quickly. Still, the connection was undeniable, pulling them together without force, like two rivers slowly converging. Each conversation, each shared laugh was a subtle healing, repairing tiny pieces of their broken hearts. As they reached the end of the pier, Ethan paused, looking out over the water. "I didn't expect to meet anyone like this," he admitted quietly. Claire turned to him, her eyes reflecting both curiosity and hesitation. "Neither did I," she said, her voice soft. "It's nice to feel understood again." The night air carried a cool breeze, but it couldn't touch the warmth that had begun to grow between them. For a moment the world felt small, the past distant, and the possibility of something new quietly unfolding. Neither wanted to speak too quickly or promise too much, but the silent understanding was enough. They both recognized a rare chance and opportunity to rebuild trust, not just in someone else, but in themselves. As they walked back toward the city streets, Ethan noticed the way Claire's eyes lit up when she spoke about her art, and he felt a gentle admiration he hadn't expected. Claire noticed the care Ethan took in listening, the way he remembered small details she had mentioned, and she felt a flutter of connection that was new and comforting. There were no dramatic confessions, no sudden declarations of love, just a slow, steady growth of trust and affection, fragile yet real. By the time they parted that evening, neither wanted the day to end. They exchanged a quiet promise to meet again, and the thought of seeing each other brought a small thrill neither had felt in months. Both returned to their apartments carrying a sense of hope, a realization that healing could begin not with grand gestures, but with small, genuine connections. That night, Claire lay in bed, sketchbook open, replaying their conversations in her mind. She realized she hadn't felt so at ease with someone in a long time. Ethan, on the other hand, sat by his window, staring at the city lights, thinking about the way Claire had smiled, how her presence seemed to calm the restless storm inside him. Both felt the pull of something delicate forming, something that could grow if they allowed themselves to be brave. And though neither knew what the future held, they both understood that meeting each other had shifted something inside them. Their broken hearts were still tender, their past still echoed in their minds. But for the first time since their breakups, they felt the faint stirrings of hope, connection, and the possibility that love could be gentle, patient, and kind. As they drifted off to sleep that night, neither could stop thinking about the other. The art exhibit had been more than a place of beauty. It had been a quiet beginning, a soft bridge between two wounded hearts ready to find warmth again. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in months, both Ethan and Claire felt ready to take tentative steps together, towards something new, delicate, and quietly promising. The days after the art exhibit brought a mix of excitement and unease for both Ethan and Claire. They kept meeting, sometimes by chance, sometimes by design coffee shops, quiet streets, and the occasional park bench by the waterfront. With each encounter, their bond grew, fragile yet undeniable. Conversations flowed naturally, laughter returned more easily, and the weight of past heartbreak seemed to lift slightly. It was comforting, the kind of connection they hadn't realized they needed. And yet the closer they became, the more aware they were of the delicate lines around their hearts. Then, one afternoon, Claire's phone buzzed unexpectedly. It was a message from her ex, simple and casual, but it carried an old ache. "I miss you." She froze, staring at the screen. The message wasn't threatening, it wasn't demanding, but it stirred feelings she thought she had buried. Memories of late-night talks, shared smiles, and the quiet intimacy of a long relationship rushed back uninvited. Claire's chest tightened as she realized that even though she didn't want him back, the emotions were still raw. She felt a pang of guilt and confusion, suddenly questioning if she was ready to open her heart to anyone else. Ethan, meanwhile, faced a mirror of this challenge. His ex appeared unexpectedly at his workplace one morning, asking to talk. The conversation was short, polite, and ended with a firm understanding that the past was truly over. Yet the meeting had stirred memories and feelings he hadn't realized were still lingering. The old hurt, the sense of betrayal, and the quiet longing he had tried to forget all came rushing back, leaving him momentarily unsettled. He knew he cared about Claire, but seeing the remnants of his previous relationship made him hesitate. Could he truly trust himself to open up again? The timing of these reminders of their pasts created a subtle distance between them. Ethan noticed Claire seemed quieter when they met, her usual warmth muted by an invisible tension. Claire noticed Ethan seemed distracted, thoughtful, as if something weighed heavily on his mind. Neither spoke of it directly at first, out of fear of upsetting the fragile trust forming between them. Instead, their conversations became careful, polite, almost measured. Every smile was tentative, every laugh slightly restrained. One evening, they met at a quiet pier near the city's edge. The lights reflected softly on the water, creating a serene yet melancholic atmosphere. Claire watched the ripples in the water, hesitant to meet Ethan's gaze. "I got a message today," she admitted finally, voice soft. "From someone from my past." It brought back a lot of feelings I thought I had moved past. Ethan nodded, understanding more than she realized. "I had something similar happen," he said quietly. "It's unsettling, but it doesn't mean we're making the wrong choice." The admission brought a pause between them, a mix of relief and tension. Both recognized that healing wasn't a straight path. Love and trust didn't arrive instantly. They were built slowly, often with setbacks along the way. And yet, despite their fears, they found comfort in each other's honesty. It wasn't a dramatic confession or a sudden declaration of feelings, it was a quiet acknowledgement that life and love were complicated, and that wounds didn't always heal neatly. As they walked along the pier, the night air carried a cool, soothing breeze, but neither felt completely at ease. Claire's thoughts lingered on the message from her ex, on the familiar ache of lost love. Ethan's mind circled back to his own encounter, the sudden reminder of vulnerability and heartbreak. Both understood that moving forward would require courage, a willingness to risk being hurt again, and an acceptance that the past might occasionally intrude on the present. Despite the unease, they stayed together, walking side by side. There was a subtle intimacy in their silence, a recognition that sometimes words weren't necessary. Every glance, every small gesture felt like a step toward rebuilding trust. They were learning patience with each other, understanding that emotions didn't follow schedules, and that love after loss required gentleness. By the end of the evening, they reached a small bench overlooking the water. Ethan turned to Claire, his eyes soft but serious. "I don't want us to rush," he said. "I just want to see where this could go. Even if it's slow, even if it's messy." Claire looked at him, feeling the honesty in his words. "I feel the same," she admitted. "I'm scared of being hurt again, but I don't want that fear to stop me from this." The air between them held a quiet tension, but also a fragile hope. They understood that both past and present would shape their journey. It wasn't about erasing pain. It was about learning to carry it alongside new experiences. The pier, the gentle lapping of water, and the distant hum of the city created a soft backdrop for this delicate step forward. Before parting ways that night, they shared a lingering look, an unspoken promise to remain patient, honest, and understanding. Neither claimed to have all the answers, nor did they pretend their hearts were fully healed. But in that quiet acknowledgement, there was trust, and trust was the foundation upon which they could build something real. As Claire walked back to her apartment, she reflected on the evening. Her chest still ached from memories of the past, yet there was a warmth that hadn't been there before. Ethan's presence, His gentle understanding, and the way he accepted her fears without judgment, made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in months. Ethan, meanwhile, returned home feeling the same quiet hope. The ache of his past hadn't disappeared, but sharing moments with Claire reminded him that life could offer new beginnings, even when the heart had been broken. Both knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy. Their pasts would occasionally resurface, testing their trust and patience. But they also realized that healing could coexist with connection, and that love could be tender, slow, and still deeply meaningful. The night ended without a dramatic confession, without an intense revelation, just a steady, mutual recognition that they were not alone anymore. And as they drifted into sleep, the thoughts of each other lingered, delicate and persistent, like the gentle waves against the pier, a reminder that even after heartbreak, hearts could find each other, slowly and gently, ready to try again. The weeks following the pier conversation brought a quiet rhythm into Ethan and Claire's lives. They met frequently, sometimes for coffee, sometimes for walks along the waterfront, and occasionally for shared evenings in small galleries or bookstores. Each meeting was gentle, deliberate and careful, like two fragile hearts testing the waters of trust. Both were still aware of past pain, but with every smile, every shared story, and every laugh, the weight of heartbreak began to lift. Just enough to let something new grow. One crisp evening, as the city lights reflected on the wet streets after a light rain, Claire and Ethan found themselves walking along a quiet neighborhood street. The sky was painted with streaks of pink and orange from the setting sun, and the world felt both alive and tenderly still. Claire carried her sketchbook loosely under her arm, and Ethan walked beside her, hands in his pockets, feeling a sense of calm he hadn't known for months. There was no rush in their steps, no pressure for words, just a shared presence that felt safe. Suddenly, Claire stopped and looked at him with a mix of hesitation and determination. "I've been thinking," she said softly, "about us. About how fragile this is. About how easy it is to fall back into fear." Ethan stopped too, meeting her gaze, sensing the seriousness beneath her gentle voice. "I know," he replied. "I feel it too. Every day I worry about doing the wrong thing, about losing what we're building before it really starts." They stood in silence for a moment, letting the quiet of the street and the distant hum of the city settle around them. Claire took a deep breath. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Not of you, but of opening my heart again. I've been hurt, and I don't want to make the same mistakes." Ethan nodded slowly, his own chest tightening with unspoken feelings. "I get it," he said. "I'm scared too, but being with you feels different. It feels like a chance to heal, not just be hurt again." The honesty between them created a fragile yet powerful connection. Neither spoke of forever. Neither tried to force certainty. But in that moment, both understood that choosing to be together, even gently and cautiously, was worth the risk. Claire smiled faintly, feeling the tension in her chest ease, while Ethan felt warmth spread through him, a feeling he hadn't allowed himself to experience in months. As they continued walking, the conversation shifted to lighter topics: art, books, favorite childhood memories, but the emotional undertone remained. They were learning to balance their past hurts with the possibility of something new. Each step, each word, and each laugh was a stitch in the delicate fabric of trust they were weaving together. There was no drama, no overwhelming confessions, just a steady, mutual care that felt more profound than any grand declaration ever could. Later, they arrived at a small park by the waterfront. The city skyline glimmered across the water, and the gentle waves reflected the lights like scattered diamonds. They sat on a bench, side by side, neither reaching for the other, yet neither moving away. The world felt suspended, quiet, and intimate in a way that neither had expected. Ethan glanced at Claire, noticing the subtle way her eyes softened when she spoke, the small gestures that revealed her kindness and thoughtfulness. Claire looked at Ethan, noting the patience in his gaze, the way he seemed to listen not just to words, but to feelings. Claire finally broke the silence. "Do you think we can really try again, even with everything we've been through?" Ethan looked out at the water, thinking carefully. "I think we can," he said after a pause. "Not because it will be perfect, not because it will be easy, but because I want to see what we can build. Together. Slowly, carefully, honestly." The words hung in the air, simple but powerful. Claire's chest lightened, and she felt a cautious hope bloom. She realized that healing didn't mean forgetting the past, and love didn't mean erasing pain. It meant choosing to move forward with someone who understood your scars and still wanted to walk beside you. Ethan felt a similar sense of relief and joy. For months he had carried a heavy weight of loneliness, guilt, and regret. Now, with Claire by his side, the weight had eased, replaced by a quiet, steady warmth that suggested the possibility of happiness. They stayed on the bench for a long time, talking quietly, sharing dreams, and laughing softly at small stories. There were no grand gestures, no dramatic moments, just the intimacy of presence, of trust slowly growing stronger. As night fell, the city lights mirrored the gentle stars above, creating a sense of calm and continuity, a reassurance that life could move forward even after heartbreak. Finally, they rose to leave, walking slowly toward their separate ways. They paused